Today we're going to talk about playing in a saxophone section. Now, playing in a saxophone section is a part of almost every jazz musician's musical education. I know for me personally, playing in saxophone sections has been incredibly helpful for me improving my musicianship skills, and it's just a really great experience being in a section with so many different types of people. Now, as we discuss things about jazz music that connect us, I can't think of anything that connects a group of people more than playing in a saxophone section. I've played in sections with musicians who are much younger than me, my same age, much older than me. I've played in saxophone sections with both men and women, and people from all over the world. So it's really incredible to take that many musicians and assign them one common goal, to make the music as swinging and as beautiful as possible. So I hope some of the tips that I share with you today will help you enjoy and get the most out of the next experience that you have when you find yourself sitting in a saxophone section. Now, it's important to discuss the responsibilities and the roles of every member of the saxophone section. While there is a first alto, a lead alto, that doesn't mean that they're the only ones with responsibilities to making a section sound good. Every musician and every saxophonist in a section has a responsibility to make the saxophone section sound as good as possible. So starting with the lead alto is responsible for carrying the melody of the phrase and primarily responsible for setting the articulation and the phrasing of the musical passage. Now, it's the responsibility of every saxophonist in the section to follow the lead alto, so that's why it's very important for the lead alto to have a certain amount of consistency when they play their part. It's very hard for the other members of the saxophone section to follow if the lead alto is constantly changing the way that they're phrasing and that they're playing their part. So that's why it's important for the lead alto to have a very clear musical vision that they can communicate to the rest of the saxophone section.
One, two, a 1, 2, 3.
The second most important voice in the saxophone section is the baritone saxophone. The baritone saxophone is at the bookend or at the other end of the sonic sound of the saxophone section. The lead alto being the highest pitched instrument and the baritone saxophone being the lowest pitched instrument. So in order for the saxophone section to sound really tight, it's important that the baritone saxophone play as close as possible, matching phrasing and articulation, nuance and swing with the lead alto. So that's why those are the two most important parts of the saxophone section, the lead alto and the baritone saxophone. The baritone saxophone sometimes gets lost in the saxophone section sound. It's important that they play confidently with a good sound, but also try to match the lead alto.
1, 2, a 1, 2, 3.
The next most important voice is the second alto. Now the second alto sits right underneath and is the closest voice to the alto, the lead alto saxophone. So it's important that they match the lead alto without covering up. It's important that the second alto player match the style, articulation, swing, everything that they can, dynamics of the first alto player. It's really important that they make sure that they find a place in their sound where they can match the intensity without covering up the lead alto. This is a little easier because they're not playing notes that are above the lead alto, but it can be problematic if you have a second alto player who plays too soft or sometimes plays too loud and overshadows or overplays the lead alto player.
1, 2, a 1, 2, 3.
The next group of saxophonists that are very important are the tenors. Now the tenors, just like the baritone and the second alto, the tenor saxophonists need to match the lead alto's phrasing, articulation, swing, dynamics, everything as close as possible. The difficult thing about tenor saxophones is they're pitched in another key center, whereas the two altos and the baritone saxophones are all E-flat instruments. The tenors are B-flat instruments. So you have to stay aware of the fact that sometimes some of the passages for alto players will be a little bit different on tenor. This sometimes creates problems, but it's something that tenor players need to be aware of, especially when they have to change registers where the alto player doesn't necessarily need to change registers. So it's very, very important that tenor players find a place in the sound where they can add volume and they can add density to the saxophone sound without playing too loud. A lot of times we have first tenor players who sometimes will phrase their part a little bit differently than the alto player, the lead alto player. In this situation, you risk having the tenor player come out of the saxophone section sound and not necessarily line up. So it's very important that both the tenor players offer harmonic support as well as stylistic support to the lead alto.
1, 2, a 1, 2, 3.
If everybody is following their role, you're going to get a very, very nice blend and a very, very nice saxophone section sound that's going to be enjoyable and a lot of fun to play in. Again, these are things that you need to talk about with your section mates. When you're playing in a saxophone section, it's important to have these conversations about style and articulation and nuance, remembering always to listen to the lead alto player, and the lead alto player usually will have the final decision or the final say in what the saxophone section does. However, it is also very important that the lead alto player listens to suggestions from other members of the saxophone section.
One, two, a 1, 2, 3. 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 One, two, a 1, 2, 3.